Yo, what's checking, everybody? Welcome to the Orangebloods post-game show. I'm Jeff Ketchum. That is Jason Sukamel. Easy for me to speak. All of a sudden, my lip is swollen. I don't know why. Anwar Richardson will be joining us live from Lawrence, Kansas, as soon as he's done with the Steve Sarkisian press conference. The post-game press conference, the post-game show, brought to you by the Loewy law firm. If somebody messes you up and you get injured and you need to sue somebody, there's nobody better in the Austin area or in the state of Texas, for that matter, than Adam Loewy. Give him a shout. He's been a sponsor of the show for a long, long time, basically since the post-game show started 6 or 7 years ago. The Longhorns dominate Kansas 55-14 in a game that will forever be remembered for Bijan Robinson having 243 yards rushing and 4 touchdowns, and the Longhorns as a whole rushing for 427 yards and 6 touchdowns. The passing game was an afterthought, but you know what? When you win by 41 points, Mr. Sukamel, the passing game doesn't automatically have to matter. Your initial thoughts on a game that was way before halftime?
Yeah, it's funny. We talked all week, I think, on our prediction show and the modcast, and part of it being weather related. We thought Texas would come out and pound the rock, and we thought Bijan would want to have a bounce back game. And that was both of those wound up being true. I don't think any of us envisioned, like you said, 427 yards, 6 rushing touchdowns, just a dominant performance by the offensive line, obviously the running backs, just a dominant performance. Quinn Ewers didn't play very well. It's funny. I'd give him like a passing grade, probably just barely at a 115.7 QBR, but that was like the 15th note on my random thoughts that I just posted on Orangebloods. So like you said, when you score 55 points, Catch, you're not going to nitpick the quarterback play too much. But great win for Texas, man. I thought I predicted a Texas win, but I thought it'd be a low-scoring, close game. I thought Kansas would ugly it up and make Texas have to sweat. But like you said, it was over long before halftime. Honestly, when Texas went up like 14-0, it had a feeling then that this game was pretty much over. So, this is not a bad Kansas team. Texas made them look really bad, but just a tremendous performance for Texas, top to bottom, offensively with the ground game, defensively as well. They gave up a couple late meaningless scores, but really good performance overall by Texas.
Yeah, I thought Texas was going to score a boatload of points in this game. They end up doing that in a way that I don't know that I saw coming a mile away. I thought Bijan was going to have a big game. I thought Quinn Ewers was going to have a big game. I thought Xavier Worthy was going to have a big game. And in the end, it was just the Bijan Robinson show for much of the first half. Although, credit to the Texas defense, they pitch a shutout through 3 quarters against a Kansas offense that has scored points pretty much against everybody other than against Oklahoma State. If I remember their schedule early, they had a game early in the season where they won a close game, and it was really kind of low scoring. Off the top of my head, it was 2 months ago, so it's hard for me to remember. I think this game officially, it was 17-0, and Kansas is driving, and Jared Casey scores a touchdown that would have cut it to 17-7. They called the illegal man downfield penalty on KU, which is a really harsh penalty because it wasn't one of those where it was obvious that he was downfield. In fact, the Fox crew pretty much said they wouldn't have thrown the flag. Then they end up missing the field goal. So instead of it being a 17-7 game, and maybe it's a game, because maybe it wouldn't have been. Like, even if KU scores 7 there, maybe Texas was always going to score 55 and the Kansas offense was always going to struggle today. But Texas went down and scored immediately after that to make it 24-0. And barring a collapse, Texas was going to win this game in a runaway, and they did not collapse. And all you can do is give a huge dose of attaboys to everybody involved in the Texas running game and everybody that was on the Texas defense. But really and truly, Bijan Robinson was otherworldly today. And at the end, it was about how long will they keep him in the game Would they keep him in for the whole third quarter? Because if they had, I feel pretty certain he would have got to 300 yards. In the end, 25 catches for 243, the 4 touchdowns. And it's hard not to think that, oh, my God, this guy's got one regular season game left in his career and then the bowl game. Then that dude's headed off to the NFL. And I wonder, we've seen so many great running backs, Jason, come through Texas, that what Bijan's doing right now doesn't feel super special, if that can make any sense at all. Like you and I just alone, like forget about going back into like the Earl Campbell years and all of the great backs that would have been there in the 60s and the 70s, because Texas has a lot of guys that are NCAA Hall of Famers. But just you and I for the last 20 plus years, right? And Ricky and Cedric Benson and Jamal Charles. And so we're watching Bijan Robinson play, and it's like, oh, he's the next in the line of great Texas running backs. I swear I watched him today, though, and thought to myself, I've just never seen anybody at Texas do what this guy does from a style standpoint. There were times today when I thought he looked like Barry Sanders. There was times today where it was a little Reggie Bush. And in the end, maybe he's just Bijan Robinson, and his skill set is special enough that one day we'll be comparing others to him. But my goodness, after only 12 carries last week, Steve Sarkisian was not going to leave any bullets in the running game gun today. And in the end, Texas wins big. It turns in like if this had been a closer game, Jason, and Texas wins in the second half, and I think there probably would be more enthusiasm about the win. Weirdly, Texas wins by 41, and I think the fan base probably turns into a little bit of a ho-hum kind of reaction. A lot of that may have to do with the fact that West Virginia didn't do Texas a favor today in its game against Kansas State, and now Texas is in a position where they have to beat Baylor next week and then hope that this Kansas team that they just played can pull a rabbit out of their hat against Kansas State in Manhattan. To Kansas State's credit, against a team that handled its business convincingly today in Morgantown.
Yeah, I think Texas probably handles its part of the equation, but Kansas, what I saw from Kansas today going into Manhattan, that's going to be a tough stretch. You know, I'm talking about Bijan catch. It's interesting. He rushed for 243 and 4 touchdowns. Normally, if you see numbers like that, you're like, okay, he must have had like a 60, 70-yard or multiple like 40, 50-yard runs. His long carry was only 32 yards. But, I mean, literally every time he touched the ball, he averaged 9.7 yards. I mean, every time I looked up, it's like, oh, there's 12 more yards. Oh, there's 14. Okay, there's 7. There's 2. I mean, I'd like to go through his carries, but I don't remember hardly any runs where he was like stopped within a yard or two of the line of scrimmage. And some of those runs were just he took some criticism last week, including from me. I thought he didn't play well last week and didn't maximize his opportunities. But, man, his vision today, and like I said, that the third quarter touchdown run, I guess would that have been his third touchdown run, I think, where he kind of just bounced it outside. I mean, just made a nice move in the hole and bounced it left and then jukes a guy in space. I mean, just it was Bijan at his best today. The numbers certainly back that up. I mean, Jonathan Brooks, 11 carries, 108 yards. He had a 70-yarder sprinkled in there. To rush for 243 and averaged almost 10 yards a carry, 9.7, and have a long run of only 32 yards. That's just an interesting stat to me. You would think he'd have a couple, big runs mixed in there, but he was just consistently dominant like every single time he touched the ball. But like you said it, man, I mean, this was Bijan Robinson at his best. I don't think he's ever played this well in a Texas uniform. And got 2 more games, Longhorn fans, so enjoy them while you can.
It's funny. There's a Quinn Ewers conversation to be had coming out of this game because the passing game seemed to be on training wheels. But it feels like if we have that conversation today after a 41-point win that we're a couple of douchebags in doing so, right? If you spend too much time focusing on what Texas didn't do, we'll talk about Quinn Ewers in a little bit, but I want to preface it by, if we do enter a Texas quarterback conversation here in a second after a 41-point win, and it feels overly critical, I want to acknowledge from the very beginning that would be very harsh on us to do so. But, we can't just talk about Bijan Robinson and the Texas defense until Anwar shows up, and then talk about the question. Obviously, I want to ask Anwar when he gets onto the show is Roschon okay? Because that's probably the only real question in the aftermath of this game.
What was his injury? I was typing and I didn't even see it.
I mean, I didn't either.
Yeah, I don't know.
And it never really gained a lot of attention. I don't know if he was in pads on the sideline. They just didn't mention that a whole lot. So I'm curious to see what that looks like after the post game. It'll be his senior day next week. He literally just accepted an invite to the Senior Bowl. So, I hope it's not something serious, obviously, but I hope it's not even something that would keep him away from being able to play his last game at DKR, because if there's a guy on this team that deserves to have a senior day, it's without a doubt Roschon Johnson. Real quick, we'll hit a couple of super chats. We won't fall behind by a bazillion like we did a week ago. Tom G says we scored 2 second-half touchdowns. We can stop talking about that and winning on the road.
Hey, 3, Tom. They scored 3. 20
hey, don't you dare cheat them, Tom, because Roschon got 1, and then Jonathan Brooks had 2. So that's 3 second-half touchdowns. They got them in both quarters. So the streak is completely dead with regards to what Texas wasn't able to do. And, Tom, you're right. Second consecutive road win. It does help. There's a lot of things, I think, as we exit this season, and the quarterback thing, I think, is going to be one of them, where I don't know that we have answers, or there will be things that we just talk about for the next 9 months until the start of the next season. But the way they've ended the last 2 games on the road means that at least when we look at next season's schedule, there won't be this road. They still have to, go out and win tough games on the road, but it doesn't feel destitute like at one point it did earlier this year. And, Tom, I think you're exactly right. Jay Lee says, encouraging game. Teams of our past don't come out and play as well as we did on the road after the TCU game, especially with no real goals still ahead. Today was real improvement. Jay, I'll disagree with you. Like, this team is still playing for something. They just don't control their own destiny, Jason.
Yeah, they don't. And, I think Texas historically has played pretty well. And not last year, I guess, but, I can remember games where Texas bounces back from tough losses and plays pretty well. But, this is improvement. I mean, I think Jay and, Tom said it. This is a dangerous Kansas team. And a lot of us picked this game to be close. And we thought if Texas didn't play well, that they might be right for an upset on the road in cold weather. So, you don't want to, I don't want to say Kansas was awful. Kansas didn't play well today, but credit to Texas, man. This is a big step forward, I think, for Texas. And you're right, Ketch. They don't control their own destiny, but Sark mentioned it this week. He said, hey, they've talked about it. They're aware that they still have a chance to play in the Big 12 championship. They're going to obviously take care of their own business. And they're going to need some help next week from this very Kansas team. But it's just a really good performance from Texas. Again, we'll get into the quarterback play. That's the one thing you can nitpick. And Quinn Ewers, again, is going to have to be better probably next week than he played this week in the past few weeks. But just a great win. And, it does seem to show progress in a program that this team is able to go on the road in a tougher environment, again, against a pretty good team, and win easily. And they were able to close out a tough road game a couple weeks ago. So, those are things we hadn't seen in a year and a half under Sarkisian. So, those are definitely signs of progress.
I did think Kansas was awful today, but I thought Texas made them look awful. And, sometimes you can damn a win by saying that the other team was terrible, but I thought Texas was the reason. I think with Jalen Daniels, you could see there was some ring rust, and it took him. The game was over by the time he settled into the game. If you're Texas, though, maybe he settled in and caught some rhythm just in time to go on the road next week and play Kansas State. They're going to need Jalen Daniels to be heroic if they're going to win that game. But he has been that kind of player at times this season. He wasn't today. And you know what? Texas was due for a break, like playing a guy like Jalen Daniels. And it's clear he wasn't going to run much today. He was rusty throwing the ball. And that was just enough, I think, for Texas to pound them into the ground. And
2 carries is all for Jalen Daniels on the day, which is 2 for 12 is all he rushed for. So
yeah. Triple T Joseph 44, that's a mouthful, says if you could turn this season into a roller coaster, it would be the most popular one at Six Flags. It's true.
Just hope that roller coaster makes it to the finish line, right? So.
Yeah, and let's hope that there's not one last big loop-de-loop next week when they play Baylor. I don't completely know what to make of that game because you wonder what Baylor will have left in the tank after pushing TCU to the brink at home and then falling short. Texas will have a lot more to play for on paper next week. It's a home game. I thought if
Texas lost this game against Kansas, they may mail it in next week against Baylor. Now I'm wondering if Baylor maybe mails it in a little bit against Texas. I mean, listen, they'll want to beat Texas. Texas is one of their quote-unquote Super Bowl games, of course. I don't expect they'll totally fold, but yes, they certainly won't probably be as motivated as they would have been had they won that game.
It'll be a real challenge for Baylor to with one less day to get ready, Thanksgiving the day before the game. That's a well-coached team, and they always seemingly play hard. But Texas should be the favorite next week. They should win at home next week. It'll be a real disappointment if Texas does take a step back next week after taking a step forward.
I got to think they'll be – if they were touchdown favorites against TCU, I mean, they've got to be probably, 10-point favorites next week, I'm going to guess?
Oh, yeah, I would think so. Because Texas has been touchdown favorites against TCU, Kansas State on the road. You'd almost wonder if it's not like a 12 or 13-point spread. Why were they touchdown favorites in those other games if against a lesser team at home, they're not at least close to a touchdown more of a favorite in that game? It'll be curious to see what that line looks like next week. Kyle says, Kyle, you're trying to push us into the Quinn Ewers conversation, and maybe now is the time to have it. He says both Kansas quarterbacks threw better on the run than Quinn did standing still, and his feet set, ... Looks like 5 dots. So ... Look, Texas ran the ball 12 of their first 16 plays in this game, and they were up 14-0. When the first quarter was over, they had 15 rushes and 5 passes. So it feels like they went in. I joked about this online, but it feels like Sark went into that offensive meeting that Anwar reported on in the war room, and maybe he just told Quinn Ewers, hey, hand the ball off this week, because it was not a Quinn Ewers game. They really did not go. It was the opposite of a week ago. It was a really restrained Texas offensive game in terms of what they tried to do passing the football. There were a couple of deep intermediate balls that they connected on, but they weren't trying to hit the home run ball today. And consequently, Jason, if I tell you before the game that Xavier Worthy and Jatavion Sanders combined for 3 catches and 31 yards and 0 touchdowns,
I never would have believed that. Yeah, I put that in my notes. Raise your hand. I said if you had Savion Red and Keelan Robinson combining for more receptions than Jatavion Sanders and Xavier Worthy. And, I mean, Worthy had the one time really they pushed the ball really downfield. Worthy, it's kind of a underthrown ball, but Worthy should have made that catch. But, just not a good day for Quinn. I mean, 115 passer rating, 12 for 21, 107 yards. He did have the touchdown to Keelan Robinson, but you mentioned he had a couple intermediate routes to Whittington and I think one to Worthy, but most everything else was like kind of thrown at the line of scrimmage, right? Just pretty easy tosses for him. So,
5 yards per attempt, which is dismal. And really the touchdown, which was all Keelan, right? I mean, Keelan was so good on that particular play. It's every once in a while, like pretty much once a game, once a week, Keelan Robinson will do something that makes you go, why can't they get that guy 15 touches a game? He's really exciting. But if you take that touchdown away, we're talking about another sub 100 efficiency rating game for Ewers. Now, you don't take away the touchdown. That's not how it works, but he still only finishes with a 115.7 rating, 57% completion percentage, which is actually improvement from the last 3 combined weeks. The bottom line is we're going to enter the offseason, and there's going to be a quarterback discussion. There's going to be a quarterback discussion about, can Quinn Ewers, he has to be better than this. And if he's not, is Arch Manning going to take his job? Like, I don't want you and I to beat that into the ground. Today's not the day to have that conversation. But I said all week long, in order to avoid what I just said, you really need Ewers to play well these last 2 weeks. Just kind of change the narrative. And I don't know that the last game of the season, or maybe the bowl game, like, I don't know. The Texas football universe is a weird one. The narratives change week to week sometimes. So I don't want to say that Quinn can't completely change it, but today didn't help. And with Arch Manning coming in 2 months, Arch Manning will be on campus. And I just think we all need to prepare ourselves for when this season is over. There will be 9 months of quarterback discussion that will look a lot like the past 2 seasons of who's going to be the guy, what has to happen, what will Quinn need to do to keep Arch from taking the job. You know, it is it's one of the weird little things about this game that occurred. You win by 41, and yet I don't know that anyone will say that the quarterback helped himself along the way long-term with keeping his job. Wes jumps into the chat and says, does Texas need to test the water for a quarterback in the portal? There's a guy in Trash Station named Evan Stewart. He'd be useful too. I can't imagine that happening, Jason.
Quarterback?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think so either. I mean, Quinn's still young, so you got to remember that. And it will be the talking point of spring football and off-season football. Can Arch Manning take the job from Quinn Ewers? That's going to be really tough. I mean, listen, Quinn's not playing well. I get it, but I think he plays well enough in practice. He's got the experience, a year under his belt. I mean, Arch would have to be so much better than Quinn in practice for Sark to have that kind of confidence to make that call. I would be shocked to see Arch Manning take that job. Now, if Quinn Ewers goes in the next year as a starter, which I would 100% bet my mortgage on, I think Quinn Ewers is your starting quarterback next year. If he struggles 2-3 weeks into the season, maybe they go to Arch then. But I think beating him out before the season is just going to be a tall order. But, I don't see him going in the portal for a quarterback. Evan Stewart, much more likely, I think, than getting a quarterback in the portal. I think they just try to develop Quinn and try to get Arch ready if he's needed, or hopefully maybe after Quinn departs, and keep developing Malik Murphy. Who knows what's going to happen with Hudson Card. I think the focus this spring will be development of Quinn Ewers, though, and trying to get Arch up to speed rather than going for a portal quarterback.
I agree with you. They're not going to the portal, because even if Hudson Card transfers, they still have 3 scholarship quarterbacks. And what transfer is going to want to come? I mean, you'd have to take who's kind of you'd have to take a guy. I don't know who you could take. It would have to be somebody that enters the portal and can't find a home, and then has to settle for. You're not taking the job from Quinn, and you'd be hard pressed. You're basically the number 3 quarterback, and I guess it would just need to be your dream to suit up at Texas for a year. I don't think they're going to do it. I do think Evan Stewart is a real possibility that continues to live on. It's quite possible that you would be taking Evan Stewart to replace Xavier Worthy. I don't want to get into that conversation today, but it's something that we've mentioned this week. 2 catches for 30 yards today. Next year, he enters a contract year, and he's going to want to play with a guy and in a system that he thinks, no doubt about it, is going to elevate him into the first round of the NFL draft. And if this was his junior season, Jason, we would, I think, be having conversations about, does he come back? Because What does his draft stock look like? He hasn't had a great year. I think I think this team still has a lot of it almost reminds me of like when a baseball team season ends, and sometimes you just don't know the next year what the team's going to look like. Texas is going to lose a lot on defense. They're going to lose Bijan, and Roschon. It just changes everything. I don't know. It'll be a situation that we have to just continue to monitor, but that conversation won't go
Xavier
away.
Worthy got 5 targets in this game. This is a game, Catch, you and I thought. I think Alex used the term squeaky wheel.
Yes.
So we thought he would get peppered with targets. Whittington had 9. I mean, I have been waiting all year for Xavier Worthy to just have that breakout game where he gets, tons of targets, tons of catches, and it's just not happened. And I mean, there's only one regular season game. I mean, it's just not going to happen. This is not in the offensive cards this week. And listen,
I'm going to stop taking Xavier Worthy more on Prize Picks.
Yeah, I stopped that several weeks ago, and I'm glad. But I can't imagine Xavier's too thrilled about 5 targets, 2 catches, 1 drop that he had that he could have caught the ball. But 5. This is a guy that last year he had like 20-something targets in one game. It was something silly.
Yeah. Even last week he was in double digits. It's surprising. I thought this would be a week where they would go out of their way to kind of try to please him a little bit and end some of the Xavier Worthy discussion. And, I don't know there's going to be a lot of Xavier Worthy discussion this week. There just will be that's a plot in the story that isn't going to go away. And I don't even know that if he catches 10 passes today that it completely goes away.
Might help, but it probably doesn't completely go away. Yeah.
In this world where the portal exists, I mean, there's just conversations that we're going to have at the end of this season about certain players that never really existed before, because in the past, Xavier's not going to transfer and sit out a year, but in a world where he could just go to USC and make some money and keep making the same level of money in NIL that he's already making and go play with Caleb Williams, it's something that has to be monitored and watched. Is that Jamie? I'm sorry. My eyes.
Yeah,
it is Jamie. He says, still stand by my opinion. Bijan, arguably the best Texas running back ever. Pure poetry in motion and the best receiving running back ever at Texas. You buying that, Jason?
I'm buying he's the best receiving running back. I'm buying that it was poetry in motion today. That's a good way to describe his running today. I mean, he was physical when he needed to be, but it was poetry. It was beautiful. It was fun to watch. No, I'm not buying that he's the best running back ever. Earl was a little ahead of my time, but I still think Ricky is the best I've ever seen. I think Ricky might be the best college running back I've ever seen on any team. Yeah.
It has been 20 plus years since Ricky was here, but I stood on the field for pretty much every game that Ricky played outside of a few road games. Just a different dude, man. Different. Like, the thing is, Bijan is completely different. Their skill sets are completely different, but what Bijan did today, 243 and 4 touchdowns.
Yeah, how many times did Ricky do that? I bet he probably did that.
He just called that Saturday.
Yeah,
exactly. That was just a regular old Saturday in his career. And he never played for coaches that were afraid to give him the ball. If Bijan had played for Makovic and Mac Brown, he might have 2,000 yards this year, and maybe we feel different. Ricky was just such a workhorse. Montgomery says, shout out to the shirtless player being a good sign. That's funny because I saw in the pregame that a couple of guys, was it Alex that made mention of he'll know if this team's ready to play, if there's a couple of guys before the game in the cold that are walking around without shirts. It happened.
Let me go back to the Ricky thing real quick. He had 9 200-yard games, 259, 259, 249, 241, 235, 223, 215, 211, 201. He had 2 300-yard games, including a 350-yarder against Iowa State. Ricky was a different breed, man. That dude's he'll always be in the class of his own for me.
I mean, I feel like there will be people who didn't see Ricky because we're at that point long enough. You're right. You could be almost in your mid to late 20s now, and have been too young to have seen that. That makes me feel old, really. Like, of all the things that I've ever said in my life, I think saying that you could be in your mid to late 20s and not been able to. That's what people used to say about Earl. When we watched Ricky, they would say, "Oh, you guys should have seen Earl." That's kind of the way I feel about Ricky. I'll just say this. I mentioned that I would take Bijan ahead of Jamal Charles. He's a more talented, but not – his resume is not as deep as Cedric Benson's. Cedric – it's first of all, Cedric was a top 5 NFL pick. Like, you know, I can't wait to see Bijan in this draft because I think you can make a case that he's going to be the best player in this draft. But the running back position has become so devalued that I wonder where he goes because he's sensational. He's going to be such a great pro. Tom says, I hit my flex play. Good for you. I took the under on Blake Corum, Neil, X, and JT, and the over on Bijan. I knew we would not throw much this game. Tom, I'd like to know how much you put on that. I took the more on Blake Corum's. It ends up not mattering, but I took the more on Blake Corum's fantasy points. He had 21.7 or 21.3 in the first half, had 1 carry for 5 yards in the second half, and then did not play again the rest of the game. I felt very much like that was about as bad of a fantasy beat on Prize Picks as you're going to have a guy at 22.5 fantasy points.
Tom won $500 on it. He said he put $50 in. Good for you, Tom.
Good for you, Tom. I'm happy for you. I did not. I went for the $100 play to try to win $2,500. No, not gonna. Where I really lost my butt was I put a bunch of Kendry Miller TCU Moores on the table today, and I think he got hurt too because he didn't get any touches in the.
I was watching that game. I don't remember them saying he got hurt, but they certainly were going to the. What's the other?
They had the other running back in the game for almost the entire fourth quarter.
Yeah.
And they were only down by 1 score. So I just assumed that he got hurt, but maybe he didn't. It wasn't a good Prize Picks day for me today at all.
At least you have money in your account, dude. My account got completely wiped out last week, so I don't even have any money in there to do any Prize Picks today. So
the last 2 weekends though have taken a big dent out of my accounts. Graham says, I thought today the incompletions were mainly drops or blown screenplay throwaways, not on Ewers as much.
I think there's some truth to that. Yeah.
I mean, they did not ask him to sling it around. Simple as that. Like it was, he averaged, again, 5 yards per attempt. So it tells you a lot about his only touchdown pass was a screenplay to Keelan Robinson. I mean, they just and look, I'm not even nitpicking that throw because they did the first throw to Xavier on the first play of the game, that little throw into the flat, which he picks up six yards on. And then they ran that little pick and pop play to Jordan Whittington that ended up going for a first down. And I was like, yes, more of that. More of that in this offense because it does give you passing game plays and yardage, and it gets, targets and completions to your better players without asking your quarterback to do a lot. Quinn Ewers is a work in progress, and I really think it is mental as much as anything else at this point. Like I talked about it. I reported on this a lot in August that there were people in the program that felt like he didn't know the offense as well, that mentally he wasn't quite there. And then that first 5 quarters of his career, and it was like, what the hell do I know? Maybe Maybe he doesn't need a brain. Maybe he can just throw the ball all over the place and like he's that talented. But the last month and a half, you see a guy that struggles to succeed on second progressions, third progressions. I do think he played a really responsible game today, Jason. So what he didn't do was throw a lot of dangerous passes.
Mm-hmm.
If it wasn't there were some throwaways. And I think you could see, okay, well, that was probably stressed in practice this week, that we're going to lean on the running backs. We don't need you to force things. And Quinn Ewers, the stats won't say that he played a good game. But with regards to taking care of the football, 0 turnovers, 0 dangerous situations for the most part. It's a baby step of progress, but one, if you're Steve Sarkisian, you'll most definitely take. Jay Harv says 3
pass breakups. Honestly, I don't even remember them breaking up 3 passes, but they were officially credited with 3. But yeah, you're right. It's almost like, Texas went out with it was crystal clear. They were going out with the mindset to run the ball, and they weren't going to lean on Quinn Ewers to win this game. And the game unfolded the way the Texas coaches wanted it to. They were able to run the ball all game. So, yeah, again, was Quinn good? No, but is this a game any of us are going to remember about Quinn Ewers? Probably not. This was not a game that he wasn't expected to do big things. They didn't put him in a position to have big numbers, and he didn't make any critical mistakes, and that's really all Texas wanted from him today.
You're averaging almost 10 yards a carry with Bijan.
Mm-hmm.
You're almost a lunatic to not just the average per carry suggests there's really nothing else you should even try to do at that point. Like, it's eventually, if he keeps averaging 10 yards per carry, he'll get to the end zone, and that's exactly what happened today. Jay Harv says, can we get Jonathan Brooks some love? Bijan and Roschon are beasts, but when he came in, he's a dynamic back. I hope he gets his carries next year. Jonathan, I wrote this. Here's what I wrote in my post-game column, Jason. I wrote that, is there a better number 3 running back in the country right now than Jonathan Brooks? I wrote, he's going to be a really good running back next season. And then I said, he's already a really good running back. The question is, will he hold off C.J. Baxter next season? And I know that I'm not giving a lot of respect to Jaden Blue right now, but
C.J. Baxter's in Austin. Let's cross that.
Yes, it's funny. There are people who think if you're Florida State, you're probably like, hey, you see that Brooks guy? He's their starter next year. Don't go there and be the backup. Come here and be the starter. They're going to be really good at running back next season. It kind of reminds me when Ricky left and Hodges Mitchell took over.
Mm-hmm.
And Hodges Mitchell was like a 11, 12, 1,300-yard type running back. But he wasn't Ricky. And I think there will be a little bit of that next year, in that nothing any of these dudes is going to make anybody forget that Bijan Robinson was the best player on the team. But they're going to be, I think, a good running team with good running backs. And Jonathan Brooks,
offensive line, so it'll help.
And Jonathan Brooks will be at the front of the line. Like, he's going to get his chance next season to carry the load. And if he's the starter, I expect him to be 1,000-yard type running back. He's really good.
Well, I liked when he was a recruit. Everybody kind of overlooked him coming out of.
I did.
Small. I could pull the tape, so to speak. I was beating the drum way back then.
You're like the president of the fan club.
I know. And I remember talking to someone at Texas, and this is when they were recruiting L.J. Johnson, who ended up going to A&M, right? And people inside the football offices at UT weren't too worried. This is before Brooks had ever played. They said, hey, we think we've got the best running back in the country committed in Jonathan Brooks. Now, is he going to end up being that kind of player? I don't know, but I think he's immensely talented. I think he got overlooked because he played at a small school, but he did what you expect great players to do when they're at a small school. He freaking dominated every time he took the field, and just a good player, man. Good vision, kind of just glides through the hole. He's fast.
He's got great vision.
Yeah,
he's
really
good. He's got great vision.
And you saw it on the even the touchdown run, the short touchdown run. Didn't look like much, but he saw the hole, cut left, and for whatever it was, 3-4 yard touchdown, but just the short touchdown, the first one. Yeah, great vision. I mean, there's really not, from what I've seen, the limited times we've seen him play, I don't really see a weakness in his game. And I like everything about Jonathan Brooks. He can catch the ball. Great kid, Tim. We talk about Bijan and Roschon. I mean, I don't know what they're doing in this running back room at Texas, but these are all. I mean,
he
Jonathan
could be
Brooks,
a captain in 2 years.
Absolutely. He's that kind of character and that kind of kid. Absolutely right. So, yeah, I'm glad for Jonathan. Like to see him doing well. I know, sadly, lost his father. I think it was in the offseason fairly recently. So, just a guy that's pretty easy to root for. So I was glad to see him do well.
Yeah, I got to throw myself on the sword a little bit here. I did not love Jonathan Brooks. I was really worried about two things added together made me think, one is that he's not a guy that necessarily is going to go to a combine and just, his track numbers didn't scream, just didn't stand out in a way that made, and the level of competition was such that I thought, great player, playing at a level of football that is kind of sketchy, and I just didn't know that I believe. He's so much better than I gave him credit for. Jason, I was as wrong as you were right, and I was way wrong and you were way right.
Feels good to get one right.
Hey, take a bow on that one, because you beat me 55-14 in that particular conversation from recruiting. If Evan Stewart were to come, do you think we lose someone else in the wide receiving core? There is some smoke. We've already mentioned Xavier Worthy is a situation to keep your eye on. Yeah, I think wide receiver is going to be a position where there could be some turnover. It might look wildly different than – because I've already heard that Texas will probably take 2 through the portal. So to take 2 through the portal, I think means you might and that's pre-Xavier Worthy, whatever he does.
And you get Nayor back next year.
Nayor back, but I don't know how much they're going to count on him as a starter. He'll be found money coming off of that injury, and whether or not he's ready to play at a high level. You got Jonte Cook coming in. Your wide receiver class is going to be really good, and yet they still, I think, will go into the portal. And Evan Stewart will be a guy. Seriously, it would not shock me at all if Xavier Worthy left and Evan Stewart came in, and Evan Stewart's really freaking good. So, it might be, I don't know. It'll be a situation I think that everybody's just going to have to keep your eye on, and obviously we will. Larry says Arch would have to beat out Malik Murphy first. You're not wrong, Larry. You're not wrong. But Arch Manning, I don't know that Texas fans or anybody is completely ready for what it's going to mean when Arch Manning is on campus. But Jason and I go back long enough to remember what it was like when Chris Sims showed up on campus. And they had they literally had the Big 12 Offensive Player of the Year on their team in 1999, which would have been Sims's first season. And all anybody wanted to see was Sims on the field. And that was when Major had his best season. So I'm just letting people know. Look, and Larry, you won't find two people who will root for Malik Murphy as much as Jason and I will. We, just like Jason talked about Jonathan Brooks, we're very big fans of Malik Murphy, the person. He's got a ton of talent, and you're right, he does have to beat him out. The world will change a little bit in this town, in this program, the moment, because Arch Manning is national. I mean, he will be a focal point of the nation, even if locally you're not seeing a whole lot of that. He's a big deal, and I just don't know how you run away from that. It will make next season absolutely fascinating.
And if Malik does end up beating out Arch for a year or whatever, he's almost in a no-win position. The first incompletion or interception he throws, I mean, everybody's going to want to see Arch. So I think Malik's immensely talented, man. That guy's got arm talent for days. And like you said, we love his personality, his character. I just think he's going to be in a really tough position. And not that Sark cares what anybody else thinks, but there is going to be a lot of pressure to play Arch Manning when Quinn's done, or when Quinn, be it next year or 2 years, whenever the time comes, the pressure to play Arch Manning is going to be significant. So, I mean, Malik would have to not just win the job. He would have to be so clearly better than Arch, I think, to ever get that starting job. But, Malik's – listen, he was kind of overlooked in high school for a little bit. He stuck it out at his current high school where other schools wanted him to transfer. He didn't. He kind of waited his time. Gets in there and takes a team that hadn't won a lot, takes them to wins a state championship. So I think Malik's got a lot of talent. I think he's a gamer. I think he's about as good of a leader as you're ever going to see. So we'll see how it unfolds. But for Texas, they got a lot of good options. That's a positive, I guess. So
we've got Anwar Richardson live in Lawrence, Kansas, to give us the breakdown following Steve Sarkisian's press conference, following a 55-14 win for the Longhorns. Real quick, because we're getting ready to go to Anwar, and it will be the Anwar show for a little bit as he informs us as what's happened. 2 super chat questions. We've got some stacked up, but I wanted to get to a couple. How bad was Joe Burrow's first year at LSU? He was mediocre, and then supernova in year 2. So if your point is to draw parallels with Quinn Ewers, touche. Quite frankly, though, I don't think Joe Burrow was as poor. And by the end of Joe Burrow's first season in LSU, he started to play good football at the end of the season, but it's not a poor point, Christopher. And then the other one, just because it'll be weird for Anwar if he won't know the context of a couple of these questions. Larry once says Bijan is a good receiver, but not better than Metcalf.
I'm not sure about that. He doesn't get utilized as much as Metcalf, but in terms of pure receiver talent, just the way they catch the ball and stuff, I mean, I'm telling you, we haven't seen it a lot at Texas, but
well, here's the deal, though. So Eric Metcalf went on to be he had a Pro Bowl year 1 year as a wide receiver. So Bijan's not going to play wide receiver in the NFL, whereas Eric Metcalf eventually did. However, in fewer games, Bijan will have more receptions, more yards, a higher yards per catch, and more receiving touchdowns. So as a college player, and Eric Metcalf played in a dinosaur offense. Not his fault, but Bijan's record as a receiver better than Eric Metcalf. All right, let's go to Anwar Richardson, who joins us live from the press box in Lawrence, Kansas, following a 55-14 Texas win. I'm going to keep Jason here long enough, Anwar, just because we talked about really one question from the postgame, and then you can give us anything that was interesting beyond that. How's Roschon? Because the TV coverage never really explained what happened with him. And with senior day next weekend, we want him to be healthy.
Well, so what's up? Hey, so Ketchum's interesting because he was asked about Roschon towards the end of the press conference, right? And he kind of took a step back and kind of said, well, he said, I don't think it's going to be anything that's like long term, I believe is kind of how he used to describe it. I'm trying to see if I can find the exact stat. And then he also said something to the effect like he went to lower leg injury, and then he said he'll be back. But so we know Sarkisian, that could mean anything, right? I mean, he could be back in the NFL. Like he could be back, for Senior Bowl. For Senior Bowl, Pro Day, something like that. Like it's, when he's saying stuff like that, it's vague, right? So who really, really knows as relates to that? And one of the things I'm going to have like in my column, just my general opinion on that, Catch, is that Roschon Johnson has been the most unselfish person at the University of Texas. When you talk about a guy who switched positions when he got here his freshman year, patiently sitting behind Bijan Robinson, the past couple of years, being a team leader and contributing on special teams. if this was the moment that Roschon Johnson said, I think we're going to be a little selfish right now. And I'm just going to worry about getting ready for the NFL and not playing in the Alamo Bowl or the Houston Bowl. I would be okay with it, quite honest with you. I would say, you know what? You've given enough. Go ahead and get ready for the pros. You've done all you need to do. You already got an injury. Go ahead and rehab that thing for the next month and get ready for, like to Jason's point, Senior Bowl, Combine, whatever case may be. I would be okay with that, Catch. I would assume you would too, if the way I outlined it.
He only has 6 days to get ready, so that is one of the. I mean, they will 6 days from now they'll be done with the game, so it's a short week, short turnaround, not ideal circumstances. If you got a lower leg injury, of that getting better, it's his senior day. I really hate that he would, because I think and he'll get it whether he suits up or not, but that guy deserves to be in pads and to run out in front of 100,000 people and to really get the love that he deserves. I know he'll get it whether he's in street clothes or pads, but would have loved to seen him get senior day. If that ends up being off the table, then yeah, I'm kind of with you, Anwar. If at that point he needs to get his body right, because in January he will have the Senior Bowl, then, I'm okay with whatever Roschon needs. But I really wanted him to have that moment where, and maybe he'll still suit up in pads next week and still do the thing, but it'll be disappointing for his career to end that way.
Yeah, I definitely would, agree, with that. But like I said, whatever he wants to do, I think that dude has absolutely earned it. He talked about, Sarkisian also talked about, basically the team being, resilient, kind of bouncing back, after the loss, being able to kind of pack that defense and bring it up, on the road, pointing out, Jalen Ford and his performance and, and what that looked like, again. The obvious things as far as Bijan is concerned. But, he just said, they did make it a goal that they wanted to, run the ball a little bit more, and definitely wanted to do it more than they did last week. And he was very happy and pleased that, what Bijan was able to do as far as being explosive. But he also said he liked all the running backs. He said every single one of them he thought played extremely well. And so he said as great as Bijan played, he felt really good about how everyone else stepped in and performed as well. Trying to just go through some of the nights, the notes here. He definitely thought the offensive line played way better this game than they did the previous game. He said he thought the line of scrimmage was very clean tonight. Gave Bijan the opportunity to get to the second level. So very happy about that. He also talked a little bit about DJ Campbell being in there for a little bit, but he said he also said look, we got a bright future when you look ahead to the running back room and you look ahead to that offensive line room as a program. He's just proud of what those guys were able to do. So makes a lot of sense, right, Catch, for them to be able to play a lot of the younger guys. A lot of those younger guys were able to excel there. So when you think about Bijan leaving and Roschon that we're talking about, and like the guys who will be behind, and of course what's going to happen with the offensive line next season, Sark showed a lot of optimism as relates to that. He said, when as relates to the Big 12 championship game, Catch, he says some things are clearly, out of their control. But he just wants to finish strong and play well in front of the final home game and DKR, for senior day, kind of things what you've kind of mentioned. But he pointed to the resiliency. He's pointing to the culture, things that he's really proud of as relates to this program. And where they are right now. And even with the setbacks that they've had, he still feels pretty good about where they're at as a program is concerned. So I think that was kind of it. We didn't get a long time with him, Catch. I want to say if I look at the minutes of this thing, it only ended up being about 7 minutes, 7:42 from a press conference. So it was a lot shorter than I think it would be. Actually, looks like we maybe right around like 8 something. So still shorter than a Monday, which is 30. So when I say short, when it be a little over 8, because they got a plane to catch. So I think that's kind of the highlights of what he was saying. And I would tell you from a post-game perspective, just a scenery perspective, in the end zone, as they go to the Eyes of Texas, there's a lot of Texas fans in the lower bowl, and there was a lot of celebration going on, Catch. Like, they really celebrated this game and this win. Like, they were excited. Sarkisian was pumping his fist. The players were excited. They all started going over to a lot of players, and even Sarkisian to a certain degree went over to the fans and was letting the people hug him and take pictures with them. Like, it came across like this was a big victory for them, which of course we look at it like Kansas, but they really embrace this. Like, this was something huge, for them, and huge for the program, and a huge win for the season. Bijan was out there for a long time taking pictures and signing autographs. Quinn was out there for a little bit, but a lot of players were out there. So, like I said, coaches as well. So they really soaked it in. Like, they really soaked in this win, this evening. And look, when you have a disappointment, might as well, and I think they feel like they look. I guess you catch in maybe yesteryear, you could probably look at a win against Kansas on the road and say to yourself, that's nothing to celebrate. But, I mean, this is a bowl-eligible team. I mean, they did have 6 wins, the same amount as Texas did have, when Jalen Daniels came back. And, I'm sure they've heard all this week about how good he is and how hard he's going to be to stop. And they pretty much neutralized him. They pretty much neutralized the entire team. So, Sarkisian picks up his second road win. And, in fact, when I brought that up to him, Catch, I said, I phrased it like, hey, Sark, we here have pointed out every Monday the difficulty that you guys have had on the road. I said, but 2 out of the last 3 games, you guys have had road wins. And he goes, 2 straight road wins. And I'm like, sure. Yes, 2 straight road wins. So he felt good about it. And you know what? They took a victory lap, and I would say they probably deserved it.
Jason, any questions of Anwar? Are you ready to get on out of here? You and I have been going. You've been here for nearly an hour, so if you want to bow out, you can. But I wanted to make sure, since neither one of us was able to see the press conference, that you got in. Any questions of Anwar?
On my TV over here beside me, so I'm going to go watch it here in a minute. But no, good. I'm seeing a question in the chat. Did Malik Murphy travel with the team?
Yes.
Yeah, Malik did, but Charles Wright did not. I guess he's ill or something. We were told. So, but yeah, Malik Murphy was one of the 3 quarterbacks that traveled for this game. So yeah, I'll let you guys bring it home. And Anwar, hey, you have a safe travels home tomorrow, man.
Thank you, appreciate it. Early flight too, man. I got like a 8 a.m. flight tomorrow. So you know how you start doing that reverse math. Okay, what time do I gotta get up? What time I gotta drive to the airport and be there? This and that. Like, don't be surprised if you see my column posted at midnight tonight, Catch.
I was going to say that's one of those where you wonder, first of all, do you even bother sleeping? You know what I mean? It's like, it's a hard one because you got to get at the airport at a certain time, and so I get it. And you still have to make the drive from Lawrence to KCK when it's all said and done.
Yes, my son is with me. He's with the sitter right now. I just got a picture, so he's having a good time. So
good. Good.
But we won't make this a career tonight, so we won't be here for until 8:00 discussing it.
No, we don't. This doesn't have to be a marathon. Your initial, look, Bijan, yay! I mean, he was. You can imagine we've had the Bijan is all world conversation today. Sure. We've talked about the defense and that, like, they deserve a lot of credit. 0 points allowed through the first 3 quarters. You mentioned them a second ago, really neutralizing Jalen Daniels, who was clearly had some ring rust. Mm-hmm. But you know what? Texas is due a break every once in a while. And, and they also, created some breaks. They were great on defense today. If I were to say the thing that's non-Bijan related that stands out the most to you, and the running game, right? Jonathan Brooks was great. We've I promise you, we've given you those guys their roses. What stands out the most about 55-14 in Lawrence?
The defense stands out to me the most, Catch. I mean, this is a defense that just has not packed it as relates to the road. I think when I put in my prediction, this is a defense that allowed 468 yards on the road against Kansas, 27 points. They allowed 535 yards and 41 points against Oklahoma State. They allowed 479 and 37 points against Texas Tech. And this is a defense here that look now is it down to 346, and a lot of that comes late and only 14 points. So this is, to me, for the criticism that Pete K received, to borrow a Jeff Ketchum term, it's time to give the man some damn respect. I mean, This is all due respect to Gary Patterson. At the end of the day, the guy who's in charge of this defense is PK. And, this defense showed up. We've seen the emergence of several guys this year, Catch. Like Jalen Ford has gotten better, but Jaron Thompson has improved as well. Mo Blackwell has improved. We can look at, Barron Sorrell. You can look at and see there's been guys who have improved, but seeing this defense come and pack it and do what they did against the road, and just really, Catch. You can pretty much almost call this game now in hindsight in the first quarter. At that point, you're like, nah, this is not going to be it. And once we got past halftime, and they continued to roll, put that pressure on them, it was pretty obvious. So the defense for me, more than anything else, that ends up being like the big non-Bijan story, is what those guys were able to do.
Well, I'll tell you what, it's a good segue into a super chat question that Tom G asked, which is, I didn't think there was a chance, but now I'm officially worried about Jalen Ford and Jahdae Barron leaving for the NFL after this year. They are balling. Tom, I think you're rightfully worried. I think that Jalen Ford is going to end up a first-team All-Big 12 player. I think he will probably make some All-American teams in terms of – wouldn't shock me if you see some third-team All-American. His big problem is his profile wasn't big at the beginning of the season, and sometimes for non-skill position players, not having – if he were to come back next year, he'd have 9 months of people talking about him being the best returning linebacker in the Big 12. I think him and Jahdae will have decisions they have to make at the end of the season. Mm-hmm. I posted in my column, Anwar, if you're Texas, back up the NIL Brinks truck for both of those guys, because you're losing a lot on defense. Whether or not we include Jalen Ford or Jahdae Barron, those two guys coming back would be really critical. Otherwise, there's a really good chance that next year, that's almost like other than Barron Sorrell, it would be like a whole new defensive line, a whole new linebacker unit, maybe even a big part of the secondary needing to be replaced. Those two guys have been fantastic.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Catch. I would agree with you. And, here's the thing with Jalen Ford, which becomes the tricky part. The NFL teams love upside. They love a guy. They fall in love with guys who they feel like are raw, untapped talent. Like they haven't even maxed out yet. They get worried about the guys who have maxed out, like the 4-year starter who's got all these incredible stats and this and that. They always worry like, has he been maxed out? But a guy like this who kind of comes a little bit out of nowhere, teams fall. Look at Joseph Asai, Catch. He would be a great example of that, right? Joseph Asai essentially had one balling out season, right? That was really what it was. And NFL teams fell in love with him. Malik Jefferson would kind of be the same way. Malik had one great year, and NFL teams fell in love with him. Both of those guys ended up being third-round picks. I think Jalen Ford is on that same trajectory where teams look at it and say, oh my gosh, look what he's able to do. If I get this guy in my system, look at this. Don't spend another year in college messing around. Come over here, get paid, and let us cultivate you and develop you. That's where I think the Jalen Ford thing reminds me a lot of those two guys as you speak about it. And so he will have a decision to make, because right now, if you told me he's a day 2 pick, you told me he's a third rounder, yes. I would say he's easily like that. Now, I'm sure in his mind, he's probably better than that. And so it's no disrespect. It's just more, we've done this for a long time. It's just, you never know what teams are going to do ahead of you. And so you've always got to give yourself that cushion. So no matter what, the agent's telling you this and that, you always got to factor in, me, I always factor in like 2 rounds, right? If someone says this person looks like a third round, I'm like, okay, that's 5th, 6th easily. If they say he's a 5th, then I'm like, he may be undrafted. And I've been pretty accurate with that. That's why I think they have. So to your point, Catch, I think Texas, when it comes to the NIL deal, they've got to look at a guy like Jalen Ford. When you want him back next season, you got to say, okay, listen, this is what you would probably make as a 3rd, 4th rounder. Let's exceed that, right? You got to find a way to exceed that because. I 100% excellent point. He's got a lot of potential, and I think
both of those guys are like 3rd round picks right now. Yeah. Like, I think, no doubt about it in my mind, that's kind of where they are. And the question would be, if they test well, there's room for improvement. But I think they both have put it on film, and I think that they play positions. Teams need guys like that. I mean, they do. And I think both guys project with more upside. We know that Johnny Barron wants that cash. I mean, it's a motivating factor for him.
Yeah.
And he's a guy that, if I'm not mistaken, is roommates with Xavier Worthy and Quinn Ewers.
Mm-hmm.
So don't I have that right? Aren't those 3 guys living together?
Yeah, I don't think Xavier and Quinn are living together now. They've kind of moved out or gone something separately, but they were at one point for sure.
At one point this summer, those 3 guys were living together.
Yeah.
I think that those guys have leverage. I think it will be critical that the NIL team, they just started the Texas One Fund, right?
Mm-hmm.
They got to direct almost all that money early on. They want to raise $20 million in year 1, because the problem that they'll have in NIL is they'll tell Ford and Barron, like, we think by the end of the spring or whatever, we can get you to a certain point. They won't be able to necessarily say on January 1st, you'll have $500,000 in your bank account. And I think those guys are going to have to make decisions about what they want to do. And I don't know that, like, when guys have like real NFL dollars that can be made. So it's not about like they might get drafted, but it's like, you're talking about millions if you're a day 2 pick. 3rd round pick is going to sign a deal worth millions, like 2.5, whatever that number ends up being. I'm trying to remember what Malik made, but I remember you posting the numbers from that deal, and it was like, well, look, man, the guy's getting like $800,000 up front and 2.5 over. It's like that's real. That is really good money, and some of these dudes, that's life changing if they handle it right. So yeah, I think that we can't give enough praise. And look, Johnny Barron only made 1 tackle today. Like, the stat book does not reflect.
Hold on one second, Catch. He had a 4-year deal worth $3.3 million and included a $923,000 signing bonus.
Thank you. even more so than I thought, right?
Yeah,
so
correct.
If people are telling him, well, you're only going to maybe be like a 3rd round pick.
Correct. Only put that in air quotes, okay? Put that in air quotes.
It's so, again, in normal years, you would just say those guys are gone. Texas has an opportunity, I think, through NIL to at least give those guys something to think about. But Tom, you should be worried that the best 2 players on this defense arguably. But, I mean, Jalen Ford's been, I think, the best player on the defense this year. You could have made a case for some other guys earlier in the season, but from the second game on, game 2 through 11, my goodness. I mean, it's almost amazing to think that he made no tackles in week 1, that he didn't show up on the stat sheet, because all he does now every single week is like populate different categories on the stat sheet. I mean, they've just been great. And Jalen Ford got himself an interception again today. Someone mentioned Jalen Ford. I need to look it up, but there's a good chance that Jalen Ford is going to lead the team in tackles for loss, interceptions, probably forced fumble. Like, he's going to lead the team. I think coming into this game, I don't have it memorized. I think DeMarvion Overshown had him by like maybe half a tackle for loss or something like that. Those two were close. You know, he's just had an unreal year. And, you know, I think that if you're Texas, the one thing that will be, they lose so much up front. They could lose their entire linebacking core. I mean, Tucker Dorsey's a senior. Overshown's headed off to the Senior Bowl. Ford really is the only contributor that on paper would be coming back. Like, they need to hit the portal, whether or not Jalen Ford is coming back or not. It may become a critical area of need when it's all said and done. But then you lose Anthony Cook and you lose Deshaun Jameson, and you don't want to come back next year with Ryan Watts and some dudes. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I mean, Tom, not trying to take any of the buzz off of a 41-point win, but we're almost at the point where guys are going to start making some of these decisions. You're going to see guys not playing bowl games. I have no idea what Ford and Barron would think about an Alamo Bowl or something like that. I mean, all these dudes may be all in and they're good through January. We'll see. But these guys will start thinking about these decisions. And you just mentioned two guys that, quite frankly, will be players that, you know, make those decisions. Anwar,
by the way, I just want to address what David's saying. He said, unfortunately, NIL deals are incentive to keep players in college. They have the talent to make an NFL roster. That subject has to be considered when you're talking about roster management. The other portion of that, David, though, just want to make sure you remember, a lot of these guys, their dream is to play in the NFL. So, I mean, rather all of them. So, listen, if the money's equal, and I got a chance to play in the NFL, like, it's no brainer. Like, you know, that money means something to, you know, let's say like last year, or earlier this year, Catch, right? When we talked about Ajay Barron, right? He wasn't ready to go to the NFL, but he was valuable to Texas. So, you know, they had to come up with a way to keep him. But now where you are actually an NFL commodity and you get to live your dream, it's hard to put that dream on a back burner when it's right there. The thing that you've been doing since you've been in Pee Wee, Pop Warner football, is to then say, nah, I'll put that dream off for another year. It's hard to walk away from a dream. I just want to make sure I threw that in there.
Well, and real quick, I'll just end this conversation on this. Barron's a unique situation because he almost went to the portal because he wasn't making NIL dollars. And Texas kind of called his bluff and said, you don't really have $1 million NIL deal or anything even remotely close to that from any other school. What we're not going to do, because they did not really take care of Jahdae Barron and give him big NIL dollars because they were worried. I mean, this is some of the minutia of this conversation, but I think it will potentially play a role. They told Jahdae Barron before this season started, hey, go play and be pretty good, and then you'll get your NIL dollars and we'll take care of you. But up until now, he ain't making $250,000 in NIL. So when they come to him at the end of this season and say, hey, we want to get you some NIL dollars, if he's legitimately has some enough, if he's really looking at the NFL, I have no idea like how his feelings will come into play with regards to how it went down this summer and what he has or has not already earned in NIL money. But, you know, I think it could play a role. And like now you want to give me NIL money. I wonder if they can give him enough to make him ignore the fact, because even if they give him NIL money, he ain't gonna make $1 million. These situations are really good for guys who might be drafted, and it's like, hey, don't take any risks. Like Cameron Dicker, right? Come back. We'll get you $250,000.
Correct.
And you don't have to take any risks. Guys that are definitely going to be drafted at potentially pretty high, it's a different kind of risk suddenly that they have to take. And, thank you, by the way, El Presidente.
Oh, he is hitting big right now. Catch.
Oh, well, good for him.
No, let me see. I'm gonna show.
I'm glad somebody is, because I've taken it on the. I've already mentioned this, but my prize picks this weekend. Again, womp womp womp.
Really? Well, Catch, I'm not going to jinx where I'm at, but I'm just going to tell you, I went for it all, the 2,500 this week.
Yes, sir.
And I'm not going to jinx where I'm at right now.
But you got a chance.
There's a chance. I'm halfway through. I'm halfway through the 6.
Okay.
So I got a chance.
Last night in the NBA plus today, I got hard. I mentioned this earlier. I had Blake Corum 22.5 more fantasy points. He had 21.3 in the first half and then got hurt and didn't play in the second half. Came up just short by a point because of the second half. It just hasn't been my day.
Did you check your Slack message though?
I will.
I was going to say, I showed you what El Presidente is doing right now. He's winning big. My man is winning big.
Good for him.
My man has won about 5,000-6,000 so far.
Those are not like hundreds. Those are thousands.
Yes.
Thomas Just long ago asked about Quinn Ewers in the super chat and about his struggles. Before we specifically address this question, thoughts on Quinn? They clearly we're not asking him to win the game today. Thoughts on what obviously was a pretty pedestrian performance?
So interesting. He definitely, it's Sark clearly understood that he can win with Bijan, and that was going to be the goal. I think we've talked about this, right? Just run Bijan. Like, don't overthink this thing. Just you win it with Bijan. And look, they didn't ask him to throw it 39 times. They didn't ask him to throw it 49 times. And just do the couple little things here and there. And again,
don't take any chances.
Don't take any chances. I don't even know how many deep shots they took. Catch. I don't think he took on, but maybe one to Xavier, if I'm correct, and that one was incomplete. And outside of that, Xavier finishes with 2 for 30. At this point, Jordan leads all receivers with 6 for 56. I think Sark understands at this moment that Quinn's a young guy that at this moment can't win him a game. And because you can't put it on his shoulders and say, go out there and quote unquote carry the team, he's got to use the other weapons that he has until Quinn is ready, until he's developed, until he's hit that point. And I think he understands that, right now, I think maybe last week needed to be the eye opener for him to say, you know what? That's not working. We're going to have to simplify this thing. I've got Bijan. It's going to be really hard for people to stop him. Give him as many touches as possible. Get involved in the passing game. Use Roschon. Use Keelan. And, don't ask a lot of Quinn at this moment. And that's what he didn't do. That's what he did. So, I think we're starting to see it's interesting. What's this? Here's another game where we go to the passer rating. 115.7. It just kind of is what it is.
If Keelan doesn't just turn something out of nothing on that touchdown, hey, quarterback's best friend is a play where he doesn't have to do anything and the other guy does everything and you get a touchdown out of it. But without that touchdown, We're talking about another sub 100 quarterback rating today. 5 yards per pass attempt, doesn't turn the ball over, which is no small thing, but dude, I'm telling you, we're headed for the spring where there's just a full-on quarterback conversation.
Once the room gets sorted out as to who's going to stay and who's going to go, right? And I think that's going to be the two things. Okay, when Hudson, we're expecting him to go at some point. We just don't know when he pulls the trigger on that, right? But we expect him to graduate in the spring, and Hudson's probably out of there at that point. And then there's the Malik Murphy conversation as to where is his head at, in this whole thing. Because if you're Malik Murphy, you can say to yourself, well, okay, the guy in front of me has struggled, and that no one's called upon me. No one's asked me, to come in here and see if I can spark it up or anything to that effect. Hell, if you're Malik Murphy, if you're Malik Murphy catch, you tell yourself, I could have done that today. Right. I mean, if you're Malik, you're standing on the sidelines and you're looking at, the starter completing 12 of 21 for 107 and 1 touchdown. And you said to yourself, like, I can do that. Why can't I get some runs? So you got to see where Malik's head is. And I think there's going to have to be some conversations with Malik as to this is why you should stay. And this is the opportunity that you're going to get. And but will he believe it, knowing he's had to sit behind Quinn and never got the opportunity, and now Arch is coming in? Does he really believe that opportunity is here at Texas, or does he just basically believe he's the odd man out? But now so depending on who stays, it may end up being just a 2-man battle, in 2023, as to who starts. And I don't know, Catch, I don't know what the right answer to that is going to be. Like, do you want Sark on his 4th quarterback in 3 seasons? I don't know what that looks like. And look, the argument can be made, like, if you found the right guy, so be it. But, do we go from Hudson to Casey to Quinn to Arch? I mean, that seems kind of herky-jerky. Like, that seems like really not establishing any real momentum with one person. But we also know that Arch is coming here. The thought process for Arch previously was, hey, maybe I'll just, enjoy my senior year because Texas probably won't need me. Quinn's going to do the damn thing. So you know what? I'm going to redshirt anyway. So you know what? I'll just stay here. I'll go to, the homecomings, and, I'll do all the, spring breaks. I'll just get there in the summer. I'll redshirt, and then there's that. And then something has happened where he said, you know what? I think I've got an opportunity to play right away. And so now all of a sudden there becomes more urgency of, hey, I'm going to early enroll. I'm going to see what else is out there. And so, yeah, I think as this thing is trending, unless he puts up an OU performance, numbers that are similar in the next 2 games, I think we're trending towards that whole, like, to your point, open competition. Let's see what happens. And, it'll be an interesting conversation of what Sarkisian really decides to do and how he decides to approach this thing.
A few quick thoughts. I think Hudson Card is probably on the sideline thinking, I should be the starting quarterback of this team. I'm better than him. I also don't know that that's an incorrect statement. I think that you could make the case that if Hudson Card had just stayed the starting quarterback all year long, that Texas is maybe controlling its destiny next week with regard to getting to the Big 12 championship game. I don't think Hudson Card is going to be the starting quarterback in Texas ever, but I think he believes he's better than Quinn Ewers. I think the data suggests that's probably correct. I mean, you saw the numbers from earlier this week where side by side what they're doing throwing the football, Card is surprisingly kind of miles ahead of him. I mean, they showed numbers today on the TV broadcast that just compared Quinn to all of the starting quarterbacks in the 5 major conferences, and he ranked second to last. They're getting poor quarterback play on not today, right? He didn't do enough today to have, I think, a real strong opinion. Like, he was horrible. They didn't ask him to do anything, really. But over the course of this season, as we've got a full body of work to look at, Quinn Ewers isn't playing well enough. I said on Monday and throughout the week, they really needed these last two games to bounce back in a way to take some control back of the narrative. Mm-hmm. When Arch Manning shows up, this city of Austin's going to go nuts. This is a dude that can't take an unofficial visit to this town without every media member knowing, if I just take a picture of that guy and post it onto Twitter, I'm going to get more retweets and likes than anything else I've done all year. All I'm going to do is just take a picture of him. When he shows up in 2 months, Quinn Ewers is going to have to win this quarterback job all over again. Quinn Ewers will be the starting quarterback next year if he's a much better player than he is right now. He's got to go into this offseason and think to himself, I've got to master this offense. You know what? Because Arch is going to show up and he's going to know the offense frontwards and backwards. When Thomas says here in the super chat, do you think Ewers' struggles or difficulties dealing with the defensive adjustments, or is he just in his head? I don't think right now Quinn Ewers has consistently the ability to make more than one read. Not good enough. Not good enough when Arch Manning is coming to town and the mental side of football is his biggest strength. Quinn Ewers has a lot to prove, and he's running out of time to prove it this year. And I think we're looking at a full-blown quarterback competition in the spring. Ewers would be the favorite for the exact reason, Anwar, that you said. Can you really have a fourth quarterback going into year 3? Is that really the recipe for Sarkisian to do what it is that he wants to accomplish? The flip side of that is he can't afford to go into next season with one of the worst starting quarterbacks among all Power 5 schools. So Ewers is trying to make leaps and bounds.
And the other flip side too, Catch, as you know, and I don't want to rehash the video that we did earlier this week, but it's also fair to say, we talked about transfer portals and this and that. If what you would consider to be your number one receiver is like, I don't know if I can get to the next level with this quarterback. When you're a number one receiver, you know, at the end of the day, he's going to say, okay, I'm happy I got the win. 2 catches for 30 yards. And what does that put him for the season? 600 yards or so?
This was far from the squeaky wheel big game performance that Alex talked about and I co-signed on. If you're Xavier, you're like, God, dog, man. Like, we really came out here today and played our quarterback with training wheels. And the byproduct of that is we won. But one of the other byproducts of that is I ain't get no shine with my 2 catches for 30 yards. All those dudes will celebrate the win. Xavier Worthy ain't going to be happy with 2 catches for 30 yards. And, you know, I mean, I'm kind of full and expect. Jason asks in the super chat, I think you let X walk if he threatens again. Not the kind of team guy Sark should be looking for if he's threatening every offseason. You don't let one of your top 5 players in the program just walk. If you can keep him, you keep him. The issue isn't like that Texas somehow has some control in this. The conversation is Xavier Worthy's going to go into this offseason into what will be his NFL contract year because he ain't playing college football more than 3 seasons. And he's going to look and say, can I get what I need to get in this situation that I'm in? And if not, is there somewhere else I can go where the platform and the certainty of what I'm working with is much better? I mean, it's not even controversial to say it at this point. Caleb Williams, just as an example, is at you. But look, I could CJ, you could throw out a ton of guys, right? You could throw out this cat at North Carolina. You could throw out Obviously, USC is the situation that everybody will point to, but there are situations that are more lead pipe cinches, locks, than coming back and playing. If you're Xavier, I don't know how much trust and faith you have in the quarterback situation right now. And playing with a freshman quarterback, even one whose name is Arch Manning, ain't exactly where I think his mindset will be.
Because at that point, he still has to learn and grow, and he ends up being the guy that everyone's learning and growing from. And, he's got to say to himself, okay, this is benefiting everyone else. How's this thing benefiting me? Like he can't have him catch. And damn it, man, I am my battery's at 19%.
We're about to wrap this bad boy up, Anwar.
But you can't have him going into an off-season catch feeling to himself, man, my life was so much easier when Casey Thompson was my quarterback. Like that's not what you want him feeling like. But that's the reality. That's his reality. Is my life was way easier when Casey was my guy. And that's, and I think we would say Casey at this point is a pretty mediocre college quarterback. So that's a problem.
Biggins, Minnesota. I'm guessing that it just might be Biggins MN. I guess I'll be careful there, not assume that means Minnesota. Was everyone happy to see Sark throw the headset off, even up 30, because of the substitution issue that forced a timeout? You'd love to see that fire from a head coach regardless of the score. Sure. I mean, yeah.
Okay.
Yes, Biggins. I don't know how else to answer that other than to say yes. And then one last super chat, and then we wrap this thing up, Anwar. And then the comment came from Triple T Joseph 44, which was Jordan Addison isn't having a much better season than X. That's true, but he's also been hurt. USC, by the way, that game has already started. I can't wait to go watch it. I've been waiting. This USC UCLA game is one I've been waiting all season for because of the quarterbacks involved. Jordan Addison's not having the big season, but it's not because his quarterback's not good. I mean, the quarterback he's working with is going to be in New York for the Heisman and has a 31-2 touchdown to interception ratio. And his coach isn't asking him to play with training wheels. So, I get it, Triple T Joseph. But Jordan Addison's still projected to be kind of a first-round pick. We'll see what happens. I get what you're saying. I totally do. But the situation that Jordan Addison is in is he can't blame it on the quarterback. He can't say, I shouldn't have transferred for Pitt. I made the wrong decision because this guy's not any good. It just hasn't quite come off for him, but it ain't because of the quarterback. Anwar, give me your parting shot. Let's get the hell out of Dodge. We've been going for 90-plus minutes. You got your battery about to die. You need to get back to KCK so that you can get with the babysitter and the kid. Like, there's a lot going on. It's Kansas, so let's wrap this thing up.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's a win, to win against a 6-win team, puts Texas to 7. One of the things I'm writing for tomorrow, Catch, is look, if you beat Baylor, that's an 8-win season with the potential to go to 9. I think you go into the offseason feeling a lot better about yourself. If you can get there, you finish 8 and finish with 9, then all of a sudden, I think it's a lot of happy, feel good, like this isn't as bad as we thought, kind of things. And then, there's a lot of things you'll be able to point to. And, as far as the what is Blake saying?
OU's kicking Oklahoma State's ass. That's it.
Okay, gotcha. Let's put this down. So yes. So yes, I just got sidetracked. I got to get used to Blake when he does that. But overall, there's a chance to end this thing on a positive note. And so because there's a chance to end this thing on a positive note, I think you take this win, try to get the win against Baylor, and then try to get the bowl win. I think you go into the season feeling really good about this team and the trajectory. So that's kind of where my parting shot is.
I 100% agree with you. I mean, really, Texas is very close to ending the season on a good note. And the bowl game, I think, will mean a lot because you want to end up 9-4 and not 8-5 and go. But today was a good day for the Texas football program. I think that, look, Steve Sarkisian's only 3-6 on the road in his career at Texas, but he's won the last 2. So I think that narrative dies a little bit going into the offseason. We'll still talk about like at Alabama, and we'll say, well, Texas on the road isn't historically great, but we won't go into the offseason thinking they're going to lose every single road game they play. So I think the point that Sark made in stressing 2 in a row isn't insignificant. Mm-hmm. And I guess I would just circle back one last thing and say Bijan Robinson will almost certainly play his last home game next week against Baylor. He and the seniors really, I think, deserve a good send-off. And because there's so many seniors that I really like. You know, I want DeMarvion Overshown to have a big send-off. I want Roschon to have a big send-off. I want Keandre to get some love. And obviously Bijan deserves – everybody will know what it means even if he won't come out and say it. So in 6 days, we'll be doing this again. It's not an insignificant moment, even if Texas isn't playing for a Big 12 championship. I don't know that you can expect a lot of Kansas in Manhattan. Maybe Jalen Daniels has got the ring rust off of him and he comes back next week. But, like, Kansas State's a really good team. Like, they're really good. They're not great, but they've proven this season they're really good.
Kansas may have plateaued.
What's that?
Kansas may have plateaued.
Though they have, for sure. Like, Kansas is circling the drain, but they're going to go to a bowl game. Mm-hmm. But it's been a while since Kansas has been good. So, I don't know. But it doesn't change the fact that winning next weekend's really important. And I hope all you guys keep that in mind. We'll have all of our content early in the week as normal. It's a little bit of a different week for us because of the Thanksgiving Day holiday. So let me paint the picture for you. We'll be back for the Monday Overreaction show on Monday. Usual business. I'll do my live show on Monday. We will have I think we're going to do the modcast on Tuesday, Anwar. It makes a lot of sense. Instead of us recording content, let's just do the modcast so that it's got a few days to breathe. We'll have Kieran do his Tuesday night show. And then we'll let Thanksgiving be Thanksgiving. But on Friday, it will be a really big game for Texas to end this regular season on a note. Anwar, unless you have anything. By the way, I love that hoodie, that sweatshirt that you're wearing.
Thank you.
For myself and Blake, who's been producing, and for Anwar and Jason, and, of course, Adam Loewy and the Loewy Law Firm, sponsors of this show.
Adam.
And always there for us as sponsors of the postgame show through thick and thin. We will see you guys on Monday. Stay warm, stay dry, and take care of each other. We'll see you, like I said, Monday morning for the Monday Overreaction show. Until then,